All right, class, it's time for social studies. We're finally back on social studies from science. We've been on science for a while now. For social studies today, our learning target is I will know the possible origins of the first people to arrive in North America and Texas. Here are some vocabulary terms. You might know some of these already. That's awesome, but these will actually be defined throughout the lesson today. We're not going to define them here. You'll see the definitions or learn about them as we go along through the lesson. Ice Age, hunter-gatherer, descendant, artifact, archaeologist, quarry, culture, and agriculture. In this image here, it says, the first Americans hunted huge animals that died out and became extinct long ago. So let's talk about the first Texans. Little is known about the possible origins of the American Indians who first lived in North America. Some scientists say they arrived tens of thousands of years ago during an ice age. An ice age is a time when huge sheets of ice and snow cover parts of Earth's land and sea. During the last ice age, the oceans shrank. People from Asia could walk to North America across a strip of land that linked the two continents. This land bridge is called Beringia. These ancient people were hunter-gatherers. A hunter-gatherer is a person who collects plants and hunts wild animals for food. They may have followed herds of huge animals, such as woolly mammoths and great bison, across the grassy plains of Beringia. Scientists have other theories or ideas about possible origins of the first people who may have come to North America. Some think that ancient people from Europe crossed a part of the ocean that was frozen, hunting seals. Or perhaps people sailed along the coasts in small boats. Here is a closer look at that image, the land bridge between these two continents here, or at least where we think it was, right? The Bering Strait, when it was connected or frozen at that time, the Beringia land bridge. So it's kind of showing you in these red arrows how we think people may have or entered North America long ago. So let's also talk about possible origins of the earliest Texans. The first American Indians of present-day Texas were descendants of the earliest people who came to North America. A descendant is a relative, such as a person's children and grandchildren. The ancient Texans probably reached the Texas plains more than 15,000 years ago. They, too, followed and hunted huge animals, mastodons and mammoths. These ancient Texans adapted to their environment. To adapt means to adjust or change. Bones, ashes, spear points, and other artifacts provide clues about how they lived. An artifact is an object made and used by people. Scientists called archaeologists study the culture and artifacts of early people. They say that hunters in Texas threw darts or spears, using atlatls or long sticks to kill large game. Back at camp, people used the animal's meat to feed many families. They used the animal's skin to make clothing and tents. Tools were made from the animal's bones. As the people followed the great herds across Texas, they discovered resources that they could modify. In the red mesas of the Texas Panhandle, they found flint. Flint is a hard rock that people shaped into points for spears and arrows. At first, they gathered the flint from the hillsides. Later, they mined it from quarries or open pits where people mine or dig up rocks. Tools made from elevates, flint, have been found across the Southwest and the Great Plains. Archaeologists say this shows the people traded Texas flint far and wide. Trade made it possible for people to have access to resources that could not easily be made or found where they lived. As the last ice age came to an end, life in ancient Texas changed. The great beasts died out. Smaller animals, such as elk and bears, took their places. This changed the culture of the people who had once depended on mammoths and giant bison. Culture means way of life. A new culture took hold. People continued to hunt animals, but they turned more to plants for food. They modified their environment and learned to save and plant the seeds to grow food. This change to agriculture began about 2,000 years ago. Agriculture means farming. The main crops were corn, beans, and squash. People settled in small clusters to be near their fields. They dried food for later use and stored it in woven baskets and clay pots. They traded their baskets, pots, and food for other goods. I know that image is a little blurry there, but at the Alabates Flint Quarries National Monument, archaeologists found artifacts that showed how the earliest Texans once lived. So before ending our lesson, let's pause here and think. Comparing and contrasting. Explain the possible origins of the American Indian groups of North America and Texas. Compare where they came from and how they got here. And we're going to describe how ancient Texans adapted to their environment. So in the first one, for comparing and contrasting those possible origins, the first American Indians to arrive in North America probably walked across the land bridge or the frozen ocean or sailed in boats. American Indians in Texas probably followed the herds to the Texas plains. For describing how ancient Texans adapted to their environment, we learned that they hunted and killed animals, mined and shaped flint, and farmed.